I'm not going to take this anymore.
I don't want to abolish government. I simply want to reduce it to the size where I could drag it into the bathroom and drown in the bathtub.
You bet I cut the taxes at the top.
How dare you? How dare you? Go ahead. Make my day.
The Rick Smith Show starts now.
Welcome, brothers, sisters, working class heroes. This is the Rick Smith Show. Thanks so much for being here today on the big program. Lots to get to, lots to talk about. Start off first, foremost, the passing of Big Ed Schultz. Big Eddie, 64 years old, passed away in North Dakota, and a hole in the media landscape for working class voices. A true champion of workers' voices. One of those people who had a big platform and was willing to use that platform to advance working class views. Even though, look, he started off as a conservative, had an epiphany moment, and became the voice of the working class, a liberal voice, if you will, somebody who had probably one of the greatest lines ever. I fight for people who take a shower at the end of the day. That is probably, in my view, really puts together the whole kind of thought. And, it got me thinking today, because I had met Ed Schultz a couple of times over the years, had him on the show back, in fact, I remember the day like it was yesterday. We were doing weekends at the time, and we were on a talk station that Big Ed was on. And, had him on the show. We had a great interview, all kinds of, hey, we're going to do some work together, all kinds of stuff. Unbeknownst to me, the station was going to drop his program the next day and change formats. So they went from a kind of a mixed station that had Ed Schultz and Bill O'Reilly back to back, if you can imagine that. And then, they gave, a shot to someone like me on the weekends. The very next day they went to Christmas music. And from that point on, I think Ed blamed me for losing that station. But I had met him a couple of times after that, and cordial, good guy, going to be missed. The voice will be missed. And another working class voice gone. Rest in peace, Big Eddie. Horrible. 64 years old. Far too young. Let's get to the big news of the day. There are tons of stuff today. Scott Pruitt has resigned. Trump has accepted the resignation, and said he's done a great job. Did a great job there, Scotty. My take is pat him down before he leaves the building. Make sure he doesn't take any of those, what were they? He spent like 12 grand on like a couple of pens. Make sure he doesn't have the pen. Make sure the Superman phone booth is accounted for as he moves on to his next career as a manager of the Chick-fil-A that he tried to get his wife a franchise. So, hey, I know you got to look in that gig. You got to look down the road. It'll be interesting to see where he lands. Oh, I don't know. For an extraction company, something for a polluter, I'm sure he will be well taken care of. And a lot of the questions of why did he resign? Was he forced out? Did he resign because, hey, a better gig came up? We'll see. We will see on where he lands. If he ends up in one of those, $500,000 gigs, we'll know that he did someone's bidding, because if you look at his tenure, not surprising. My fear is, and understand, he was under tons of scrutiny. There were a number of suits. I think there were like 14 investigations going on and suits going on against the EPA. There's tons of pressure there. My fear now, because he was kind of a bumbling idiot, somebody kind of arrogant, I'm going to go with kind of stupid in doing some of the things that he did around his travel, around his lodging accommodations, around, playing with the little, flashy lights while going to lunch, the security detail. I mean, the list really goes on of all the abuses that this guy had under his belt in a very, very short period of time. I always do this little exercise of what if this were someone who worked for Obama? How crazy would the crazies go, given this guy's track record? Given what he's gotten away with to this point, and really in a way that very arrogant. So my fear now, and I have a pretty big fear, that the next person comes in and is really bright and is someone who really is his ideological clone, but a lot smarter, and not a lot smarter in the PR sense, and not getting himself caught up in scandal, not getting anyone's attention, and just kind of flying under the radar as they destroy, our air, our water, our land, basically the future of the country. Also that a few polluters can do more. That's my big fear. Now, the DNC put out their statement. Tom Perez, the chairman, said Donald Trump made a campaign promise to drain the swamp. Instead, he brought in people like Scott Pruitt, one of the most corrupt cabinet members in modern American history. Perez goes on to say, for more than a year, Pruitt abused his power and shamelessly wasted taxpayer dollars, and Trump stood by him in scandal after scandal. One thing Scott Pruitt didn't do with taxpayer funds was his job. Instead of protecting our environment, he protected polluters and put our children's health and future at risk. Perez says, and Trump's new acting administrator, former coal lobbyist Andrew Wheeler, is set to follow in his footsteps. The American people are watching, and they will hold this administration accountable for its corruptions. Which, I guess that's a good statement. He's the politician. He's the guy who gets the messaging. It's a lot better than mine. What my statement would have been: it's about damn time. I mean, just the simple, what took you so long? It's about time that this guy is shown the door, and not the high security door. Jeez, oh man. Not the, what's a couple $100,000 on locks? Or was that Zinke, the Interior Secretary? You get him. This administration is so corrupt. It's hard to keep straight who's wasting our tax dollars on nonsense and who's wasting our tax dollars on nonsense. It's really quite remarkable. And it comes back to what we talked about right from the beginning of this administration. As they talked about, we're going to drain the swamp. Yeah, you're going to drain the swamp, and you're going to fill it with much, much worse monsters, which is what we've seen. These people, they love their first class travel all up and down and this is what happens when you have rich people who are running government. They're not used to flying coach. They want to be up there in first class, rubbing elbows on your dime. And again, my fear is this Andrew Wheeler is smarter than Pruitt. He's going to go under the radar, not get the media attention, not allow himself to be scrutinized. And that's going to be trouble, because now what we have to be watching out for is, what happens with coal regulations. We saw the Department of Interior a couple of weeks ago. I think it was out in Nebraska. He said, you know what? We're not going to hold those mining companies responsible for basically strip mining these people's property and leaving them with land that is now worthless. Not going to do anything about it. This is the future. We're going back to the future where, rape, burn, and pillage. If you're a drilling company, drill, baby, drill. And my fear is, I have friends who live in West Virginia who have told me Evidently, there's this giant dam that has all of this slurry, this mix of this toxic stew of mining excrement, if you will. It's, just all of this soupy kind of toxic stew that's being held back in this dam that is leaking at the footer. It's leaking at the bottom, and it's not a matter of if it's going to let loose, just a matter of when that lets loose. And then who's responsible, who's going to be held liable, and, who's going to be harmed by it. And it's one of those things that, I look at and go, this is the reason that we have an EPA. This is the reason that we need people who are going to stand up and make sure that our air and our water and our land are protected. Not corporate stooges, not these ideological half-wits who think that all regulations are bad. People who are going to actually care about their neighbors. Now, look, I understand there are probably no billionaires that live down flow of that dam. So when it cuts loose, seriously doubt they're going to be affected one way or another. Seriously doubt, because one of the estimates, a friend of mine said that 3,000 people could be killed. An entire town could just be wiped away. The school that's, hundreds of yards away, just flushed away. And of course, the environmental destruction that kind of a tsunami would bring to the area, which, look, as my friend says, there's not a gallbladder in the entire state of West Virginia because of the heavy metals in the water and because of what the mining industry has gotten away with over the years. This is the reason you need an EPA who's going to step forward and say no. They're going to be able to hold industry accountable. Look, I'm not anti-industry, but you don't do dumb things. You don't externalize the costs of pollution on the rest of us and allow the people who are doing it to walk away scot-free. You just don't do it. And it comes back to that original argument of, which side are you on? And we're in one of those moments right now. Are you on the side of the very well-to-do, the big corporations, the polluters? Are you on that side, the Trump side? Or are you on we air-breathing, water-drinking, have to go to work in hopefully reasonable conditions side of the population? Because sadly, everything, and we've been talking about this for the last several weeks as Supreme Court case after Supreme Court cases come out. Basically, the 20th century is being repealed right before our very eyes by judicial activists. You look at the assaults on labor rights, you look at the assault on your right to have access to your court system, down the list. And it's only going to get worse moving forward. It's only going to get worse if Trump gets another Supreme Court seat. It's only going to get worse if that Supreme Court then basically undoes what we believe they're going to do. Roe versus Wade going to be gone immediately. And they're going to have there's going to be a woman who's going to do that. But all the other stuff, privacy rights are going to go by the wayside. We're going to have a surveillance state because, hey, got to keep you safe. Healthcare gone, back to the days of pay or die. You just go down the list and tick down where we're going, and in a perfect moment in history to look back on. Perfect moment, back in the 1880s. We're going back to the future. When workers were desperate, they were property of the company store, where, if you didn't do what the boss wanted, when he wanted you to do it, out you went, ostracized and starving on the outside of the community. We're sadly heading back to those days. And I'll tell you, it's troubling stuff, which is why November is so very important. And I love the fact that there are marches going on across the country. I love the fact that people are active, engaged in the streets, marching, making signs, all of that. But the important march, well, that's going to be on November the 6th when we go to the polls and we vote these bums out. And if you want to change the Supreme Court, you want to make sure that we don't end up back in the 1880s, the Senate is important, which is why I'm going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to talk to a candidate who's running for Senate out in the state of Wyoming. Gary Trauner is going to be here to share his thoughts on why he's thrown into this, what's important, on what the folks of Wyoming are saying. Quick break, right back with Gary Trauner. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. We're working people. Come to talk.
90% of the wealth, 10% of the people own 90% of the wealth. Where do you fit in? Take a look at yourself. 10% of the people own 90% of the wealth.
Where smart policy and sound investment matters. The Rick Smith Show.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1934. That was the day known as Bloody Thursday. The historic West Coast maritime strike had been raging since May 9th. Longshoremen refused to cede to the Industrial Association, determined to open the ports by force. The shipping bosses had rejected strikers' demands, including a union hiring hall and recognition of offshore unions. By July 3rd, picketers had been fighting for hours to stop trucks sent to move cargo under police protection as bosses attempted to open the ports. At 8 a.m. on this day, a line of strike-breaking trucks emerged. Thousands of strikers amassed in the warehouse district. The Battle of Rincon Hill had begun. The fighting continued throughout the afternoon in the center of the Embarcadero as strikers attempted to stop the scab freight cars. By the time it was over, longshoreman Howard Speary and strike supporter Nick Bordeaux lay dead from police bullets. 30 strikers had been shot and dozens more lay in the hospital, some critically wounded. The San Francisco Chronicle reported, blood ran red in the streets of San Francisco. In Workers on the Waterfront, Bruce Nelson notes, quote, Bloody Thursday was an epic moment. Strikers conducted themselves with remarkable precision and imagination in the face of 3 successive assaults by police who were using their firearms freely and laying down a barrage of tear gas bombs. Donald Mackenzie Brown, the businessman eyewitness, was overawed by the workers' insane courage in the face of bullets, gas, clubs, horse hooves, death against fast patrol cars and the radio. They fought back with rocks and bolts till the street was a mass of debris. They were fighting desperately for something that seemed to be life for them. Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show.
Where family values are more than slogans. The Rick Smith Show.
Seriously, you want to save the 20th century? You want to make sure that women have voting rights, that minorities have voting rights. You want to make sure that women have choice. You want to make sure that workers have the right to form and join unions. You want to do all those things that we thought of as the 20th century. You want to save the New Deal? Vote a Republican senator out of office. To me, that's the quickest way you do that. Save the Supreme Court moving forward, which is why I think it's important to get Democratic candidates running for Senate on the program, which is why I've asked Gary Trauner to come talk with us. He's the Democratic candidate running for the nomination to run for Senate in November there in Wyoming. Gary, thanks for taking time for us.
Appreciate it, Rick. Happy to be on with you. And by the way, I don't have a primary, so I've already got the nomination to be in the general election.
Well, that's fantastic. So let me ask you this. I mean, as I pointed out, the Supreme Court to me is, one of those. It's right now front and center on everyone's mind, which is, I think, one of the main reasons we need to get more Democrats in the Senate.
Oh, absolutely. It's funny. I was just talking at an event that the DSCC was holding a couple of weeks ago back east, and look, it's a simple argument for Wyoming, and I know not a lot of people pay attention to Wyoming, and I'll tell you why you should. But the simple argument is the Democrats can play perfect defense this cycle. They can reelect every incumbent, and Mitch McConnell's still in charge, and the next Supreme Court justice takes away whatever women's and workers and environmental rights we still have. So you got to go find good candidates in tough states and support them early. And Wyoming, I need 100,000 votes, Rick. There isn't a state in the country that's even close to that. My win number, I can knock on all those doors myself. So it's doable. And you're right. You know what? If you don't go find good candidates in tough places, nothing's going to change.
No, I was watching your video, and I got to tell you, I love your video. But the one part you talk, your path towards changing the country is, go out and meet every voter, which I understand you're in the process of doing. Listen to what they've got to say. then that's going to get you to victory, and then we solve the problems of the country. Seems fairly simple when you lay it out on a whiteboard.
It should be, and I'll tell you, quick little history. I'm not a professional politician. I'm just a regular guy. I've been a business guy most of my life. I was the COO. I ran a hospital out here where I live in Jackson, Wyoming. But I did decide to run 12 years ago for U.S. House, statewide race. We only have one member of the House because we're the least populated state in the country. And I knocked on over 25,000 doors in that race, literally myself, because that's all I knew how to do. And I ended up losing by less than half a percentage point. I needed to change 500 more voters' minds in a state like Wyoming. And so it tells me it can be done. Honestly, I never thought I'd be doing it again, but my kids know their future is at stake. They are scared shitless, frankly, and they convinced me to run because we need good people to step up.
No, you're right. But here's your problem. I mean, Wyoming is arguably the reddest state in the country. Having gone for McCain with 64% of the vote, Romney I guess got like 68. Trump even got 67%. You got a high hurdle.
I do, but again, I'm going to tell you that 12 years ago in a very similar off-year election, I came within a hair's breadth of maybe the biggest, taking back Dick Cheney's old seat, and maybe the biggest upset of the cycle. So it can be done if you're willing to put the work in. And I think it's really similar this time around to what it was like in 2006, maybe even worse. People are so fed up with D.C. and the dysfunction there. And even Trump voters are fed up with folks that are part of the D.C. dysfunction and the D.C. playbook, as we're calling it. So I think we've got a really good chance if we can get out there and get our message out. Absolutely.
You got to get out there and beat on those doors. I loved one of the things you tweeted out. You said about the tax heist bill, that trickle down is really code for we'll take it all suckers. And do you when you're out knocking on doors, do people get that? Because I've been railing against these trickle down policies and the argument that tax cuts create jobs for at least a decade now. Do the people you're talking to, do they get that?
I think they do. I mean, look, it's a fraud, right? We've always known it's a fraud, and I think we need to be willing to talk about it in that way. But here's the key. We just did this tax cut, right? And we ended up giving companies that have more cash than they've ever had in the history of humankind and are more profitable than they've ever been in the history of humankind. We cut their taxes so they can make a couple more bucks. And I ask people, let me ask you a question. When did it become more important to give large corporations a little bit more profit instead of protecting it and helping people get ahead? When did that become government's role? I don't think it is. And when you mention that to people, they clearly get it. I also ask a really simple question. Who in Wyoming wants New York hedge fund managers to pay lower tax rates than Wyoming teachers, miners, and ranchers? And the answer is obviously literally nobody except for our federal delegation, because they're bought and paid for by Wall Street lobbyists. And who wants Medicare to not be able to negotiate drug prices with big drug companies? Literally nobody except for our federal delegation. So I think people get that we've got an issue with big money and big corporate dollars running the show, and that's got to change. So, yeah, they respond.
No, I hope so. I hope they respond in November because, we keep hearing this, this call. We want business people to run for office. And I heard it all during 2016. I don't really like Donald Trump, but he's a businessman. He's going to bring business principles. I got to tell you, I wouldn't be all that thrilled if you brought the Trumpian kind of business principles to office. So, tell me how you're different.
Yeah, those Trumpian business principles are not who I am. I mean, look, I'm about people, right? I mean, to me, at the end of the day, it's about creating jobs and helping people be more productive and having some social value to what you do. So to me, it's not a question. I'm an entrepreneur. I started a bunch of companies, some successful, and frankly, some haven't been. But I like building things and starting things and creating jobs. And to me, that's a way different situation from being greedy and trying to take everything you can possibly get. I'm a strong labor guy, too, and I have been since I ran last time. And, to me, it's like I ask people, what is wrong with people getting together and having enough power to talk, to deal with people that have all the money and all the power in companies and be able to negotiate better working conditions, more productive lives for themselves, for their families, more, safer working conditions and more, salary and benefits. I mean, what's wrong with that? Right. So I think I'm a different kind of guy than the Trumpian business model. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. As a business person, because I've asked, virtually every business person I know, when you were running your business, did you want to provide health care for your workers? I mean, it's always curious to me that we're married to this employer-based healthcare system. I'm a Medicare for all guy. I think we need to be moving to single payer. But as a business person, where do you see where do you see things going? Because look, we're heading for catastrophe in healthcare. The Trump
Yeah, we
people
totally
are
are.
looking to destroy. There's a new Heritage Foundation plan to destroy. As a senator, how do you fix the mess?
Well, and I was the COO of a hospital for about 5 years, so I'm intimately familiar with healthcare. So as a business person, companies don't want to be. They want to do one thing, right? They want to sell their product or service and make money doing it. They actually want to do two things, right? What they don't want to do is also be in the business of providing healthcare. It's a quirk of history after World War II that you couldn't raise wages, so companies started giving benefits to people to entice them to work for them, and that's how we got an employer-based healthcare system. It makes no sense whatsoever. And by the way, all of our products are more expensive because foreign companies don't have to price healthcare into their products, into their cars, whereas companies that build cars here do have to do that. So we need to get away from that for sure. We need to make sure everybody has access to basic quality, affordable health care. And I tell a simple story of a person who had a hangnail, couldn't afford the $20 copay to go to their urgent care, so they do nothing about it. They stick it in some Epsom salts, and then a month later, they've got sepsis. They show up in the ER, in the emergency room. It's a $100,000 event because they're there for a week. They still can't pay the bill, so the hospital has to eat that bill. And you know what? The hospital marks up everything it charges everybody else. There's a hidden tax on everything they do to pay for the people that are uninsured. So we need to get sure everybody covered and make sure everybody is more productive. It's the morally right thing to do, and it's the economically right thing to do.
No, absolutely, and that's basically the argument that I make. It's but I think we used to know this. I mean, used to the ounce of prevention, pound of cure kind of thing.
Right, and it's amazing to me. Again, you talk to business leaders; they don't want to be in the business of being a healthcare insurance company. Providing healthcare. That's not what they do. So it's amazing to me that we can't figure out a way. And, it's amazing to me that the folks in the leadership in the Senate today, their best plan after having 7 years to come up with something was to take healthcare away from an additional 20 million people.
Yeah, well,
I also think, go ahead, Rick, sorry.
Yeah, it's go back to pay or die. I mean, that's their goal.
Right.
Though.
Well, we have a GoFundMe model of healthcare, right? Someone in your family gets sick and you set up a GoFundMe page. That's crazy. I also think, by the way, 80% of healthcare decisions are made by women in a family. This is a women's issue too, right? This is an issue about making sure that women have the access to health care for their families and for themselves and decision making so that they can be productive and keep the family together. It's a family values thing.
No, absolutely. And I find it interesting that the people who tell us that the party of family values and that they're pro-life, that they're the ones who are blocking access to care and ultimately dooming people to shorter lifespans.
Yeah, it makes no sense.
No sense. You're listening to the Rick Smith Show. We're here with Gary Trauner. He's running for Senate there in the great state of Wyoming. You want to check out his website, traunerforwyoming.com. We'll get links at thericksmithshow.com for how you can help out. Let me ask you this, Gary, because, I ask every candidate, one, why do you want to throw yourself into this madness? What is it that makes you want to jump out and be in the fishbowl? And two, what's the issue that Gary Trauner dies on? The hill that you go, there's no movement on this issue.
Well, and I think I already mentioned it. To me, it's sort of big money and this bias towards corporate, towards corporate policy versus bias towards the people-based policy. It's that simple. We need to find a way to make policy that helps regular people get ahead. And I get it. We don't want to. People don't. We don't want to just give handouts all over the place. But we have to have policies in healthcare and education and jobs and competitiveness that allow people to be successful and get ahead instead of making sure that companies make a little bit more money here and there. And it goes back to trickle down, right? And it goes back to the latest tax cut, Rick. I tell people I can give my kids, I have two sons, I can give them instant gratification by raising their allowance. And they can go buy an extra milkshake at the corner drugstore, maybe an extra video game these days, right? But if I take the money out of their college fund, and 5 or 7 years down the road, when it's time for college, I'm like, look, guys, you got some good milkshakes there, but you can't afford to go to college. That's what we're doing today. That's what these guys did. They tried to buy off loyalty for a bunch of people, and they only gave them temporary tax breaks, and they gave permanent tax breaks to large corporations and wealthy heirs, and they, blew another $2 trillion hole in the debt. And so it's what I call part of the D.C. playbook. It's say one thing, do another, and hope nobody's paying attention. Yeah. And that's what they do in D.C., and that's got to change.
And the other part of it is, in my view, and you can agree or disagree, is they're creating the big crisis down the road so that they can come back and say, you know what, sorry, Granny, we got to take back that Social Security money. Sorry, sorry, we're gonna snatch back that Medicare. For me, that's the end game, and it's extremely transparent in my view.
I totally agree with you. And to me, it's amazing when I talk to seniors, they get it. They don't want it called entitlements. They're like, we paid into this system. We paid into Social Security. We pay into Medicare. It's not an entitlement per se. It's not just a giveaway. And we've earned it. And I think we also forgot why we have these systems. I was talking to a guy outside of Evanston, Wyoming, who was this kind of big free market guy. And he said, I think the free market always comes up with the best product at the best price. And we were talking about healthcare. And he said, I want to get rid of Medicare. And I was like, you do understand we have Medicare? Because the free market doesn't cover seniors affordably. Seniors are a bad risk. They get sick, right? No company can make money on seniors. And he looked at me and said, well, the market's going to come with the best product at the best price. And I said, fine. What if the best product at the best price still isn't good enough? What if it costs $10,000 a month for a private company to provide insurance for a senior? They can't afford that. That's why we have Medicare. So I think we've forgotten that we want to take care of our seniors, of our parents and our grandparents. Same with Social Security. And I think you're right. The end game on this thing is to starve the beast and then come back and say, we're going to take away your social safety net.
Yeah, and take us back to the pay or die days. Because I argue we've set up a system in this country that gives private corporations, cherry-picked people. We take the most expensive out. CHIP covers children, and Medicare covers the seniors. So the most expensive parts of healthcare, your first 5 and your last 5 years, and you know this better than anyone, I'm sure, we've taken them out of the market. So all the private industry gets are the really profitable people who have jobs. If you don't have a job, you're not in the private market. You're probably on Medicaid. So again, we're
it's like running my community hospital that I helped run. We have an outpatient surgical center that's owned by physicians down the street and a private equity group, right? They can take anybody they want. So they don't take folks on Medicare and Medicaid that, doesn't pay well. They take the people that have good private insurance or the wealthy people that can afford to just pay out of pocket. They do those surgeries. And then the folks that they want to do surgery on that can't afford, that have Medicaid or Medicare, they do them at the community hospital, right? And it's like we want to have community organizations like school districts as well, but they have to serve everybody. And for these folks to be able to cherry pick and leave the community organizations with the dregs, so to speak, in terms of payment, that's a problem, and we need to recognize that.
Yeah, I mean, it's there's so much to get to, which is why I think it's important to have people who seem to have the values that you're espousing, running for these offices and competing for these and getting into people's ears and explaining, look, everything that you've been told about the wonders of the free market and the invisible hand, not so much.
Right. And look, like I said, I've been involved in business for most of my life. I have no problem with people that want to be successful. But here's another thing. To me, it's kind of interesting. Maybe capitalism is one of the best ways as an economic system to create jobs. But jobs are actually a bug in the system for individual companies, not a feature. Right? Because the last thing any company wants to do is hire people. And the first thing they do when they get in trouble is they lay people off.
Exactly.
Right. So we're a big coal state. And every one of the coal companies went bankrupt in the last turndown, the last 2-3 years ago. And what did they do? They laid people off. They gave retention bonuses to their executives. They cut the pensions that they had promised their workers 30 years ago. And when they came out of bankruptcy, they didn't rehire anybody because they got more efficient. Right? So it's like they have, if they can do it more efficiently, they're not going to hire people. So we need to recognize that, and we need to find ways to make sure that we protect people in their job. By the way, again, labor is one of the ways you do that. Going forward, because that's just the way that corporate America is going to work.
Last line of questioning I got for you then, because we're heading towards an automation tsunami. I mean, the talk of half of the jobs that we currently do today being wiped away by automation is coming.
Right.
Where do you see policy going in the future to make sure that you don't have these mass layoffs and more retention bonuses for CEOs and big stock wins and basically inequality in this country getting even worse than it is currently?
Yeah, I mean, I think inequality, if you look at the long arc of history, societies fall over too much inequality. And not just too much inequality, but when the masses of folks realize that it's not just the inequality, but they've lost opportunity, right? Their chance to get ahead is gone. That's when you start having major problems. And again, I think it goes back to strengthening folks in the working class. I tell a funny story. It would be funny if it wasn't sad, that there's a bunch of ranchers on the east side of the state that were starting to get inquiries from wind farms, big corporate wind farms, to put up wind rent their land for wind farms. And of course, for ranchers that are having a hard time in agriculture, that's a great thing for them, right? So they realized that these companies were starting to take advantage of them. So the bunch of these ranchers got together and decided they were going to negotiate together as one group.
They joined a union.
Right. And I'm like, they formed a union. But if you told them they formed a union, they would shoo you off their property with guns. But that's exactly what they did. And so I think allowing people to strengthen that is big. Now, look, job guarantees and guaranteed incomes, there's a lot of ideas floating around out there for when automation does come down the pike. We just need to take a careful look at those. I'll be, frank, I don't have an answer for that one yet. That's a tough situation. But It is coming down the pike, and we do need to start looking at what we're going to do, or else we're going to have serious dislocation that's going to end up in serious disruption.
No, and for me, I would want somebody in the Senate who is actually willing to entertain those ideas and think about it rather than go, the invisible hand will take care of us all.
The invisible hand is amoral, aethical. Look, if you want to sell me drugs, Rick, that's a free market transaction, right? But we outlaw that because we think it's wrong, right? If you want to bribe me because I've got inside information, that's a free market transaction. But we outlaw that because we don't want people to have an unfair advantage, right? We should be setting our social policy first, then using the free market as one of many tools to get where we want to go. It's that simple.
It is that simple. Gary, I appreciate the time. I hope you'll come back and talk with us again in the near future as this continues down the road.
Definitely, Rick. I really appreciate it. And I'd love to ask your listeners out there real quickly, come out and walk with me and knock on doors in Wyoming, help raise. It's the cheapest Senate race in the country, $2.5 million, and I can get it done. And, digital help, social media, all those things can help get it done. So I appreciate your having me on. I'd love to come on back and keep talking.
Good stuff, Gary. I appreciate it. Good luck.
Thanks, Rick. Take care.
All right. Again, you want to check out his website, traunerforwyoming.com, traunerforwywy.com. We'll just get a link out at thericksmithshow.com. Pretty simple stuff. Quick break. Right back. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. We're working people. Come to talk.
Yes, it is all about the children, even after they're born. Rick Smith.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1888. That was the day that the spark was lit that touched off what came to be known as the Match Girl strike in East London. The Match Girls were workers at the Bryant and May match factory. Matches were in high demand. The workers struggled under horrible conditions. If the workers were late, they were fined a half-day's pay. For 14 hours a day, they toiled. The factory used white phosphorus that contributed to a bone cancer known as phossy jaw. Both Sweden and the United States had banned the dangerous phosphorus, but it was still legal in England. The plight of these workers caught the attention of Annie Besant. Annie was a socialist and women's rights activist who wrote for a weekly newspaper called The Link. She published an article about the deplorable conditions in the match factory. Outraged, the managers demanded their workers to sign a statement saying that Annie Besant's story was false. When one worker refused, she was fired. In response, 1,400 match girls walked off the job. Progressive newspapers across England called for a boycott of Bryant and May matches. From there, the women formed a union and asked Besant to serve as their leader. For 3 weeks, she helped the strikers with their work action and to negotiate with management for safer working conditions. The company agreed to hire back the workers who had been fired. They also agreed to drop the harsh fining system, but they would not stop using the dangerous white phosphorus. In 1891, the Salvation Army opened up its own factory using a less dangerous type of red phosphorus. Finally, in 1901, Bryant and May, under public pressure, stopped using the white phosphorus. Like what you hear? Check out more at laborhistoryin2.com.
Most important issues of the day. This is the Rick Smith Show.
So it's kind of interesting that in Illinois you've got a guy running for Congress who not only Ted Cruz doesn't like, but also Illinois Governor Bruce Rauner, who's the guy who really heavily pushed for the anti-worker Janus versus AFSCME case. And what's this guy's crime? Well, he's a Holocaust denier. Nazi! I guess you can be a Nazi. You just can't say you're a Nazi to get their support. Evidently, the Illinois governor said, vote for anybody but the Nazi. So an actual Nazi they're not in favor of. Anyone right up to the point of not staking the flag in the ground, that's questionable. Anyway, let's find out what's going on around the world in Washington, D.C. Bob Ney, Talk Media News. Bob, thanks for taking time for us.
Thank you, Rick.
So what do you think? Don't vote for the Nazi?
I haven't followed this story.
Yeah, there's a guy running against Dan Lipinski. He's the incumbent.
I know Dan.
And this Arthur Jones got the nomination, and he's on the ballot. There's an actual Nazi on the ballot.
Well, I know Lipinski, so
yeah, it's
he'll win.
Yeah, well, of course, but the fact that you actually have a Nazi on the ballot is, well, I guess it's a sign of the times a little bit.
It's America, yeah. You got them all, don't you?
Yeah. And when I saw that, my first thought was back. You ever see the movie The Blues Brothers?
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Where he goes, "I hate Illinois Nazis," and drove them right off the bridge. That's what we should be doing, driving them right off the bridge, right into the drink. But before we get into all the other stuff, happy birthday, Bob.
Thank you. Thank you.
You made it another year. Good on you.
Well, I want to be 65 next year real bad so I can get Medicare. So
isn't that a
that
sad?
way I don't have to mess with anything.
Isn't that a sad testament to our times?
Oh, it's true. You never want to be 65. I do now. I wanted to be 65 3 years ago.
Yeah, I mean, you see what this administration's done to any movement forward. And look, the Affordable Care Act wasn't great, but at least it was something for people who couldn't get anything.
I was just thinking all this talk about, now the abortion issue is one thing, but all this talk about, I was just thinking this the other day, all this talk about health care and what the Supreme Court may do to it, actually that might be not a good point to raise, because if they actually undid it all and it all just completely rotted, maybe they'd have to redo it,
Or the other part
of it. It's not working now.
Yeah, I mean, or the other part of it is you get exactly what they want, and that's nothing, and we go back to pay or die.
Well, sure. Yeah.
And that's my fear. I mean, look, I would love to start back over and go, you know what? At the barest of minimums, there should have been a public option, no question. But single payer should be, and the polls are rising. I mean, more people now are in favor of moving toward Medicare for all system than I think at any point in our history, because of folks like you who going, I can't wait and wish another year of my life away faster so that I can make sure that I can live longer because I can get health care.
Right. I mean, I've just, been spinning the Russian roulette wheel and hoping, and I will for the next, 365 days, hoping nothing happens.
And that's, that's not how you live. And, the Heritage Foundation, they came out with a new plan, which anything that Heritage comes out with that has to do with healthcare cannot be a really good thing.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's true. We're going to be, on practical, it'd be free market. And also on the other end of this, Joe Lieberman he pulled out with an amendment, I think it was, or somewhere in the bill, the original American Health Care Act. He pulled out the provision that if you were, I think, over 50 and you didn't have health care, you could buy into Medicare.
Yep.
And he pulled that out because he represented, of course, Connecticut insurance states. And that was sad because that would have taken a large chunk of people and furthered the process of expanded Medicare.
And it would have helped because as you remember, we were in the throes of a major recession and just coming out of it. That would have taken a lot of those older workers and said, you know what, I'm retiring. I'm going to head to the door. I got health care. I got some pension money. It would have opened up jobs for younger workers, and the economy would have turned around a lot faster. But you're right, Trader Joe, got to take care of your constituents.
Yeah, it was terrible.
And it's not those people who vote for you either. But anyway, congratulations. You made it another year. I look forward to the next year of you coming and sharing your thoughts, your insight, and your extensive knowledge. Let's move on to the big stuff of the day. Any chance of blocking the Supreme Court nominee that Trump comes up with? There's a liberal group that may have a thought.
Well, this is a Texas Hold'em game of poker, and and what it boils down to is, if every Republican holds firm and every Democratic member holds firm, and the vice president breaks the tie because John McCain is ill and is not going to be there, right?
Right.
Now, if under that scenario, all D's hold against the nominee, all R's hold. By the way, I put that in my card. It's going to be Amy Barrett. It's going to be the nominee. But let's say that they all, and Susan Collins then leaves the Republicans on this issue, then the nominee goes down. And so there's a lot of money being spent against Susan Collins in ads and Murkowski in Alaska, naturally. Those are the two.
Right.
Now, however, and I call West Virginia stations. I called this morning WVLY in Wheeling, West Virginia, and instead of analyzing news, I asked them questions about Joe Manchin. I took my opportunity, right?
Good.
And I told them other stations will want to know, where he's at. They're going to have him on the show. He's dancing around right now. And the reason I mentioned Manchin, if Joe Manchin of West Virginia, a Democratic member, goes, of course, with the Republicans and Collins goes against them, then Pence becomes the tiebreaker and the nominee makes it.
Right, it's a wash.
It's a wash. Now, let's say that Murkowski goes and Collins goes, and it's two votes. There's still one vote short. Well,
now you got Heitkamp.
Donnelly, yeah, you know the rest of it. Yeah, so it could be 1 for 1, and then it's a tiebreaker, and the VP breaks that tie.
Yeah, I mean the hope is you're right. The hope is that those handful of Democrats hold firm on this, but I just don't see it.
Yeah, if they do hold firm, I think it would be over with because the pressure. NARAL is spending money, and another group, Justice Group, is spending money, and it puts Collins, in Maine, Republican senator, in a really tough spot. So she, in fact, may, then defect, but all the D's have to hold firm.
Yeah, but isn't this the reason that you had all of those protections in place, that you didn't just get to ram through a Supreme Court justice? I mean, look, you could make arguments for other judges, but, sitting on the Supreme Court, do you really want someone with a tiebreaker, the VP tie-breaking a scenario, to be sitting for a lifetime on the court? I mean, if you can't get consensus around somebody, I don't know that they should be there.
Used to be you could in the past, not in the recent past, but in the past, there were cases, where you would have some consensus, on the court. There were some.
Yeah, maybe it's just me. I don't know. It just seems we're splitting this court really in wrong directions. Let's move on. Trump's moving abroad. I was hoping he was gone, but 11 days still good. We can get away for a couple of days, right? Because the Twitter might slow down, and it could be someone else's problem for a while.
I know. I think he will dominate literally for the next probably not 11, but probably for the next 14 days. Will literally just completely dominate the media. Because the first thing is, of course, Supreme Court up to Monday. Then he makes the appointment, and then he, will go back and forth, and then Schumer will say things, and Trump will say things, and tweet, etc. Then he goes overseas, and he meets the Queen of England, and then he goes from there to, Brussels, the conference for NATO, and of course there he will be the highlight because of Merkel and Macron and climate and tariffs and things like that. Then, of course, the biggie, and this is the biggie, where he will then meet with Vladimir Putin, who they're going to meet, even though the staff doesn't want him to, by themselves with just translators. So it will be a domination, trust me, of just complete media domination. Now, Trump does tend to do better at these conferences, but I think that's because no matter what foreign leaders think, when, quote, the president stands up to foreign leaders, you know how that runs. I mean,
no, every president does well on the foreign stage.
Every president does.
Yeah, they all get a bump. And I'd often said maybe they should have kept him over there. He would get much better ratings. But when I read that he was going to meet with the Queen of England, immediately I'm thinking, Rodney Dangerfield goes to meet the Queen.
It'll be interesting if he does something that's out of order, because the British are anyway.
Yeah, that was my thought, and I love Rodney Dangerfield, but that was where my mind went with this kind of a buffoon, just tripping. Yeah, I don't know. To me, not good. Let's move along. Evidently, the global stock market looking to crater. What's going on?
Well, the World Trade Organization, if in fact we pull out of it, then it's going to cause a massive sort of economic earthquake.
Do you
it's one
believe
thing
that?
to go back with the World Trade Organization.
Yeah, do you believe that?
Oh, I think it'll cause a huge ripple. Now, I'm all for the tariff wars back and forth. I am all for it. But if we just pull out of the WTO, I don't like the WTO, but if we pull out and everybody else is in it, I think it causes a problem.
Yeah, I agree.
Really
I'm more anti-IMF than I am the WTO.
Oh, yeah, no, I don't like the IMF, and I love the trade wars. I unabashedly love the trade wars, and they hit us, we hit them back twice. But if we pull out of the WTO, that's gonna create a pretty big problem.
So in doing this, the other question that people have posed to me that by doing these tariffs, aren't we breaking agreements and thus end up in front of the WTO and in the tribunal courts and end up losing a boatload of money and rulings and all of this?
I guess if we're not in it,
that's what I mean. If we stay in it, if you were to stay in it, conceivably, couldn't you take a bath and a beating in the court?
So maybe you think then getting out of it is a strategy.
No, I don't want out of it. I think it's a bad idea. I think this is to me would be the beginning of starting the next world war, because at least when we're trading with each other and we're talking to each other and having these conversations, we're not going to be killing each other yet. So I'm not that far, but at some point you do have to say, $375 billion trade deficit with China. Come on, you got to deal with that.
Sure, and that's the one solid thing that Trump has.
Yep.
He's gone so far with this, he cannot stop. If he backtracks and retreats on this, he will have lost votes that he shouldn't have had anyway in the first place.
Well, it's a good point too. But my other problem with it is, and I said this right from the start, that I agree with going forward with this, but my fear is he boogers it up so badly that no one ever comes back to it, and we end up getting beaten much worse down the road.
Worse, you're right. He has to continue with it.
Yeah, once we've started, there's no going back, at least in my view. And finally, I guess, yesterday we had the second Civil War. Did you write your letter home?
Oh, you mean the Alex Jones thing?
And the Russian bot thing.
I don't follow him because he's
crazy.
Says that the kids weren't killed at Sandy Hook, which I was hoping that they would successfully sue him. But friends have showed me clips. I've just been one of those guys, Rick, I've never seen him. I've heard Mother Jones and Alex Jones, all that stuff, or whatever it was. I can't even remember the name of his show. But I had friends that about a year ago showed me some of his clips, and I'm like, wow, he's out there. Yeah, I've heard about this today, that the Second Civil War, he's writing letters or something.
No, everybody is now. To mock him. Like after the Civil War, you had people writing home because they didn't know if they were going to die or not, and they found some. And I guess Ken Burns had it in one of his documentaries, especially from Vietnam. They had the letters and stuff. So people, I guess, all day yesterday, and I threw out a couple as well. Just kind of mocking the Second Civil War idea. But I thought it was kind of an interesting thing to do on Independence Day. But as far as Alex Jones go, I think he's a showman, and I don't know that he buys anything that he says. It's all, in my view, it's all about money. I've met him a couple of times over the years at the talkers conventions, and actually had a lucid conversation with him for about 20 minutes one time. And then the second he stepped on stage, he went from 0 to crazy in a nanosecond. So I just get crazy. Wow, there you go.
He and John Bolton, right?
Exactly. So finally, are we invading Venezuela? Is that going to happen?
This was a bizarre story, and I actually called some friends up on the Hill just to kind of, take a look at this story. And I guess it's been known for a little bit here, and this finally came out. But in August 2017, the Secretary of State Tillerson at that time was there, McMaster, who was the National Security Advisor before Bolton was there. And they were sitting there, and the president didn't speak to them, but spoke basically above them to some senior staff and said, what about invading Venezuela? Basically, how would we do it? And I guess the reaction of Tillerson and McMaster was like one of those jaw-dropping moments. So Trump actually, asked about invading it.
And for what
cause?
Well,
we did invade a place one time based on weapons of mass destruction. We're still looking for those.
Yeah, in fact, Bush thought
it has happened.
In fact, Bush thought they were in the sofa cushions in the Oval Office.
Well, as we told people, what it was is Dick Cheney said, invade Iran, and Bush misspelled it, and it was Iraq.
Well, there's probably that too. But what's the point? What would be the point of going into Venezuela? I mean, would be?
I don't know. I mean, it's this stopping the dictator thing. You can't invade, especially in Latin America.
Yeah, I mean, was it like Reagan going into Grenada after the bombing in Lebanon?
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, because I just think you can't invade. Latin America was pretty upset. I guess it was brought up at a dinner too, in front of the presidents or something, or the ministers from that area of the world.
Wow. I mean, that's all I can come up with is wow. And that's probably the best place to leave that. Wow.
Yes, sir.
Bob, thanks so much. Happy birthday to you, brother.
Well, thank you so much. Appreciate it, Rick. Thank you.
Good
Bye-bye.
stuff. Our good friend Bob Ney, Talk Media News. Quick break, right back after this. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. We're working people. Come to talk.
Radio of, for, and by we the working people. The Rick Smith Show. Waving the flag of freedom for people, not corporations. Rick Smith.
We want the world and we want it now. We're going to take it anyhow.
So big decision today for Coke money. And earlier we talked with Gary Trauner about getting money out of politics. The dark money, the stuff that's going on. We really, honestly, we need to find out where all of this money is being spent. Now, a judge ruled today that the money that the Koch brothers give to George Mason University, to the George Mason University Foundation, is not something that students who are seeking to find out how much, not something they can find out, because evidently the George Mason University Foundation is not a public body and not subject to freedom of information laws. So we don't get to know how little the Koch brothers are spending at universities, across the country, to buy influence and to buy veto power over professors hired in, economics departments. We found out a couple years ago they had given money to Florida State University, about $2 million. And for that $2 million, they got veto power over the people hired in the economics department. Do you think you're going to get a good return on investment for, what to them is pocket lint? And having the ability to form the minds of the next economists, the next business people, you think that's power? Damn right it is, and they understand it. And you look at George Mason University, one of the largest crazy right-wing think tanks in the country, the Mercatus Institute, located there, the benefactor of tons of Koch money. And evidently, nope, we can't know because they're not subject to freedom of information. I'll tell you, at some point, maybe at some point, we start demanding to know where these billionaires are spending the money that we're giving them through massive tax breaks. Just kind of a thought. We'll take a quick break. Right back after this with our good friend Sarah Burris. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. We're working people. Come to talk.
Controversial, thought-provoking, opinionated. Rick Smith.
You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to thericksmithshow.com. If you've missed any portion of the program, you can download the podcast at thericksmithshow.com.
There is no other agency like the EPA. It should really be renamed the Job-Killing Organization of America.
Cause brothers, it's a fact. If we take and don't put back, they'll have to pay for all we did. So let's leave some blue up above us.
Ah, yes. Goodbye, Scott Pruitt. They're the curb. You're behind the curb. The curb, you're behind. Have a seat. Good luck. Goodbye. And by the way, search him for pens. Make sure none of those $12,000 pens end up pocketed on the way out the door. And I want to know where the phone booth is. And the mattress. Got to know where the mattress is, too. All of this, I got to know. Maybe we can put it up for auction and get some of our money back. Just kind of a thought. Anyway, let's find out what's going on in the world of Raw Story. Our good friend Sarah Burris, reporter over at Raw Story. Sarah, thanks for taking time for us.
Thanks for having me.
So bye-bye Pruitt. Gone. Back to Kansas.
Oklahoma.
Maybe a multi-million-dollar gig with a polluter. What do you think?
I think he wants to run for governor. He can't do it this year, but I think he wants to run for either. I think he was always trying to use this as a way to springboard himself into either the Senate or a governor seat or something. So I assume that that's what's going to be next for him. But I would definitely check his bulletproof pants for some of that fancy lotion.
Yeah, the lotion. I forgot about the lotion.
His special lotion that he made the Secret Service go get for him. Our tax dollars hard at work.
Did he take the secret lotion into the special? No, I'm not going there. I am not going to allow myself to go there. Just not going to happen.
There was a night last week when I was watching CNN and John Berman made a reference to the lotion, and then his face just turned bright red. I mean, bless his heart.
Well, look, I guess that's the response.
He's from Oklahoma. I mean, this is how we comment on these things.
Oh, all right. So this weekend, the big, this 4th of July holiday, the big second Civil War. Did you participate?
I didn't, this was my last weekend in Oklahoma, so I hung out with my grandpa. And
I saw you pimped out his walker. Good for you.
Oh my gosh, yeah. So he's an Army veteran. And so I asked him, what's your favorite color? And he told me red, white, and blue. So I didn't want to spray paint it because I didn't want to screw up any of the screws on it. But so I found red, white, and blue duct tape, and I duct taped the whole thing, and then I stuck a flag on the front of it, and it goes with his veteran hat. And I put a bell on it so he can ding at all the ladies.
Can't do that anymore.
Hey, I mean,
wouldn't want Grandpa going down.
I'm going to be Blanche Devereaux when I'm in the home. I mean, that's how I'm going to roll. So
we've all got goals,
right?
Did you see some of the letters coming home from the front lines of the Second Civil War?
I did a few letters just to mock them a little bit. I saw my friend Goldie did a few as well to her Aunt B, and it was fun. A lot of people end up with whooping cough and other things because they don't believe in vaccines, and a lot of people tried to get out of the Second Civil War by marrying one of the Trump children. So, I mean, power to them.
And a lot of bone spurs, a lot of that stuff as well.
Yeah.
One of my favorite ones came in the chat room that said, they built a wall with Hillary's emails, and the Republicans couldn't get over it.
Whatever works.
I liked it. I liked it a lot. But here again, I mean, while it's funny and it's all that, the sad reality is there are crazy people who really, they want this to happen.
Yeah, I mean, it's the same people who want the Antichrist to come and usher in a new, a second coming of Christ. I mean, these are the same kind of people.
So did you happen to catch any of today's big speech at in Montana? Trump went there to punish Tester. Did you happen to see any of the comments from his ramblings?
I didn't actually. So you got to fill me in on what happened.
I gotta, this is one of those things where you can't read it. It's like anything Trump. It's impossible to read. Evidently, he went after Elton John.
That's interesting because I noticed before the rally started, he had Rocket Man playing on the surround system. So I don't know if that was an allusion to Kim Jong-un or if that was about Elton John. I don't really understand, but
as I'm reading the statement, it's one of these things. He said, I have broken more Elton John records. He seems to have a lot of records. And I, by the way, don't have a musical instrument. I don't have a guitar or an organ. No organ. Elton has an organ. And lots of other people helping. No, we've broken a lot of records. We've broken virtually every record. Because, look, I only need this space. They need much more room for basketball, for hockey, and for other sports. They need lots of room. We don't need it. We have people in that space. So we break all these records. Really, we do it without, the musical instruments. It's the music. It's only musical. The mouth. And hopefully the brain attached to the mouth, right? The brain, more important than the mouth, is the brain. The brain is much more important. Did you follow any of that?
Well, my first question was, are the records he's breaking 45s? And which is my hipster comment. But seriously? What the hell?
Exactly. And I do this and I know I shouldn't. Because, I almost feel like, I'm mocking him the way he mocked the disabled guy. There's part of me that goes, there's got to be something wrong with the brain. The brain that he thinks is so tremendous.
If I only had a brain.
Way to go, Tin Man. No, I mean, I read, and this is why I've almost sworn myself off from reading any of his speeches because they're so crazy.
Do you remember whenever Tina Fey did her impression of Sarah Palin doing the Katie Couric interview, and she didn't do anything to make fun of her? She just read exactly what Sarah Palin said.
Yep.
When that happened, we were all horrified and disgusted at the idea that this person could be literally a heartbeat away from the presidency. Now this person is the presidency. So, well done, America.
Yeah, but I mean, I look at this and it's just, it's really, wow. Wow.
What is he on? I mean,
whatever it is, keep it away from me.
I know, right? Oh.
I don't know. Let's move it along. Because I see this stuff. And there was tons of attacks. I guess it went after Pocahontas again. Went after Tester, and then simultaneously goes after Tester, and then congratulates him for the VA bill. I mean, just scatterbrained and wow.
This is one of those things where somebody was talking today about how he has been doing a lot of these campaign rallies because it makes him feel better. This is like we're watching a national therapy session happen live on television. And somehow he is getting his jollies by saying his favorite lines and making people applaud for them. And if that's all it takes, I'm perfectly willing to assemble a group of people who will clap for really liberal policies if that'll maybe move him a little bit in the other direction.
Yeah, good point. Let's move it along. Mike Pence. Mike Pence back in the news, and Mike Pence has got to be instrumental in whoever this Supreme Court nominee is, because if Trump's not going to ask about what their position on Roe v. Wade, Pence is all just tingling in the panties over it. Evidently, Kellyanne Conway said that Mike Pence is pro-woman. Is that true?
That's hilarious. That is just absolute mockery. And what's funny about it is that when she said that Mike Pence was pro-woman, she was retweeting a comment from a fake Mike Pence account. So she wasn't promoting Mike Pence. She was promoting some fake dude pretending to be fake Mike Pence. So
alt Pence.
All right. I mean, she's the communication strategist, so whatever, Kellyanne.
Yeah, you just I don't know. Every day is like it's getting harder to laugh, but you can't not at some of the craziness that comes out. Does that make sense?
If you don't laugh, then you're gonna cry. So I've just been trying to laugh and just think and hope for better days.
Yeah, I mean, speaking of crying, last week we talked about the fact that Trump refused to lower the flags for the victims of the Capitol Gazette shooting. And, it's one of these moments where you go, who does that? What kind of a human being does that? I mean, I know that, they're the enemy of the state and he hates people in the media, but who does that?
Donald Trump does that. I mean, that's the kind of man that he is. He's so narcissistic and vindictive that whatever he can do to get back at somebody else, to needle somebody else, to prove that he's bigger and stronger and tougher and he has more power, then he's going to do it, even if it ends up making him look like a complete and total ass.
Just amazing to me. I mean, that there's that kind of vindictiveness. Look, these people lost their lives. I mean, you may not like what they report, but these people got up, went to work every day, and did the best that they could do. And I don't know. I got a response from somebody because I asked the question, who does this? And I got a response from some conservative telling me that they basically, these people who got killed were asking for it. They drove a mentally ill man into this, and I'm going, really? That's where you're going to go? Is there nothing of this administration you won't defend? And that's the kind of thing that's just really terrifying.
It is terrifying. And if you're going to blame a mentally ill man of being driven to something, then how is it that the mentally ill man was still able to get a gun? That's my question, because he shouldn't have been able to. But instead, Trump decided that shouldn't matter.
Scary. Now, did you hear that we might want to invade Venezuela?
I mean, what else have we decided that we're going to invade? I mean, just add it to the list of places. We're going to do Canada. We are kind of trying to decide if we're going to do Iran or not. I mean, I've always thought that Tahiti would be nice. I would sign up to be in the army if we invaded Tahiti, because then I could chill on
storm the beaches. Is that what you're?
Yeah, I would storm the beaches and in a nice, hat and some suntan oil.
And bathing suit, bottle.
Totally.
Bottle of something, maybe a whole cooler full of bottles of something.
Yes,
okay, I can see that. Yeah, why not?
I would storm the beach and then just stay there.
And then you would go AWOL.
Right, then I totally just go AWOL. And I'd probably take some people with me and be like, come on, guys, this is a totally chill, awesome country. Let's go to the bar instead.
You send one of those letters home.
Right. Dear Ma.
Dear Mom, we got stuck on the beach. We're going to set up camp. Send beer.
Opening a bar.
There you go. Send beer. Got it. All right, I like that. Let's move along. Michael Cohen, flip or not flip?
He's totally going to flip. He's totally going to flip. I mean, the new lawyer now is a Clinton lawyer and a smarmy Clinton lawyer, I would know.
Laney Davis.
But he took all of his Trump stuff off of his social media, and I mean, that interview with Stephanopoulos, he's going to flip. It's going to be awesome.
So the question that I have is then, do people believe it? I mean, because I think Trump has done really a masterful job of muddying the waters. Every day there's no collusion, every day witch hunt, every day, attacks on Democrats. I mean, give him credit. I mean, he's a master manipulator and master at dominating the news cycle. Do people believe it when the evidence comes out? And Mueller's been so secretive, when all of this finally is dumped on the table, if it ever is, do people believe it?
I think there will be probably 23% of the country, maybe even 30% of the country that will never believe anything that ever is against Donald Trump. It's going to be that silent majority, that group of people, the suburban moms, people like my mom, who's a Republican but thinks that Donald Trump is disgusting. It's going to be people like that who just go, whoa, that's insane. The thing that's crazy that I keep thinking about is that we have heard all of this terrible stuff about Donald Trump, and it's like, what else is there? You know, I mean, what else could they tell us that could possibly be worse? The only thing that they could say is, yes, definitively, he colluded with Russia, he colluded with Putin, and then what? You know, where do we go from there? It's not like this Congress is going to impeach him. So do we charge him with crimes against the state for which he can't pardon himself? I mean, is that the route that we go with this? And what does that do to the country? Is that going to be the constitutional crisis? And if then we're in a constitutional crisis and we go to the Supreme Court, do the justices that he appoints have to recuse themselves? That's my next question.
Yeah, to me, I'm of the mindset there shouldn't be a justice appointed until we sort this mess out, or
I
until
agree.
after this election. If you're gonna buy the McConnell rule, during the 2016 election, you can't then go, we changed our mind for 2018.
I mean, already we think, the majority of us feel like this is a completely, the Supreme Court justice that he stuck in there isn't a real Supreme Court justice to begin with. Now we're going to stick in another one whenever he's, wiping his feet on the welcome mat of prison.
Yeah, I would be happy to buy that welcome mat for him.
Yeah, same.
I'd be happy to chip in, and it would be a really nice one.
Big one, huge, gold.
Did you see that in the UK they've got a permit to be able to fly the Trump blimp?
Yes, it's so exciting. I kind of want one. I wish they had like mini blimps that you could get and fly in your own houses, just for giggles.
There's a great idea for an entrepreneur out there listening. Little Donald Trump blimp drones.
Yeah, totally. I would definitely get in trouble for flying that in DC, but I could take that to Oklahoma.
They would
and
be
they'd
tremendous.
Let me do anything.
They'd be tremendous. They'd be the best blimps. They'd be tremendous. They'd be fantastic. They'd be orange.
Make America blimp again.
There you go. That's great. Yeah, it's what we need. Absolutely. Absolutely, without question, we need the blimps.
Especially if you could get the blimp to deliver beer to you. Just to circle back on the beer.
All right, let's make sure we do that. I'm pro beer, pro blimp. Last line of questioning. Trump's going overseas. I have thought that the meeting with the Queen could end up like a bad episode of Rodney Dangerfield's old show when he was still alive. Any thoughts on meeting the Queen?
I wonder if he'll curtsy. I mean, honestly, the first thing that I thought was, if the blimp is happening, will he cancel his trip? If he cancels his trip, does that mean he's standing up the Queen? How many people have stood up the Queen, really? And if he does that, is he ever going to get any kind of reception with the Queen ever again? I mean, who knows?
So I don't think he's getting the big welcome. He's getting the minor welcome, right? I mean, it's not the big, all the pomp and circumstance that you would see on TV and all of that. It's a smaller response. Security, I guess, right?
Yeah, if you remember what happened in Poland last year, whenever they had to bus in people who wanted to see him, who would cheer and support him, I don't think they're going to do that in the UK.
No.
So this should be interesting.
They might make him walk. Oh, well, it's going to be an interesting couple of weeks, and it's something that I'm sure we will talk about next time. Sarah, as always, great talking with you. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Have a good weekend.
And stay away from the secret phone booth. Oh, yeah. Our good friend Sarah Burris. You want to check out her work? Fantastic job over at Raw Story. You can follow them at Raw Story. Also follow her at Sarah Burris. Quick break. Right back. Stick around. Listen to The Rick Smith Show. For working people. Come to talk.
Me and my people are through. Me and my people are ready. Me and my people just about through. I'm a massive airstrike on a beautiful night. Yeah, it's my song I'm singing. Somebody better start counting. We're coming out swinging.
Not right wing, just right. The Rick Smith Show.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1934. That was the day known as Bloody Thursday. The historic West Coast maritime strike had been raging since May 9th. Longshoremen refused to cede to the Industrial Association, determined to open the ports by force. The shipping bosses had rejected strikers' demands, including a union hiring hall and recognition of offshore unions. By July 3rd, picketers had been fighting for hours to stop trucks sent to move cargo under police protection as bosses attempted to open the ports. At 8 a.m. on this day, a line of strike-breaking trucks emerged. Thousands of strikers amassed in the warehouse district. The Battle of Rincon Hill had begun. The fighting continued throughout the afternoon in the center of the Embarcadero as strikers attempted to stop the scab freight cars. By the time it was over, longshoreman Howard Speary and strike supporter Nick Bordeaux lay dead from police bullets. 30 strikers had been shot and dozens more lay in the hospital, some critically wounded. The San Francisco Chronicle reported, blood ran red in the streets of San Francisco. In Workers on the Waterfront, Bruce Nelson notes, quote, Bloody Thursday was an epic moment. Strikers conducted themselves with remarkable precision and imagination in the face of 3 successive assaults by police who were using their firearms freely and laying down a barrage of tear gas bombs. Donald Mackenzie Brown, the businessman eyewitness, was overawed by the workers' insane courage in the face of bullets, gas, clubs, horse hooves, death against fast patrol cars and the radio. They fought back with rocks and bolts till the street was a mass of debris. They were fighting desperately for something that seemed to be life for them. Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. You want to hear something really despicable? I mean, honestly, it's one of those things where, you know, you look at what this administration has done already, and there's a ton of stuff. But this latest story from the AP, they're pointing out that evidently there have been a number of immigrants who have joined the military. They've joined up for the Army. They've joined up through the National Guard with the hope, with the belief that once they're honorably discharged, that they will become citizens. And if you go back, during the Bush years, this was something that the Bush people did an awful lot of in the post 9/11 world to get more people into the military. They basically said, you come here, you serve in the military honorably, you fight for the country, citizen. And in fact, since 2001, 110,000 members of the armed services have gained citizenship because of their service to the U.S. military. The story today that came out says, evidently, we're taking those people who have come and signed up, stepped forward and said, taken the oath to serve in the military, and I guess just discharging them. I guess just, there's the door. Thanks a lot. They claim that more than 5,000 immigrants were recruited into this program in 2016, and that there are right now an estimated 10,000 serving in the military. And, this article went on to talk to a couple of people who have been affected by this. One was a guy who said, we came here when I was 12 years old. Came from, I believe it was Brazil. And he said, I joined the Army out of patriotism. He was promoted to private second class and then booted. So you go, why? Well, evidently, according to the government's response, they haven't been able to do a full vetting, haven't been able to do a full background check, and they might be terrorists. Another guy who is of Pakistani descent, who for the article said, please don't add my name, because if they send me back to Pakistan, I'll probably be killed because I joined the army. This is what we're doing to people. Now, as the reports have, said, they don't know how many at this point. But one of the people that they were talking to, one of these attorneys, was saying, look, immigrants have served in the army since 1775. Without them, there's no America. We're not going to win the global war on terror. We're not going to be able to do any of that if you don't have people who, speak the language, who know the ground. And this is, again, one of these things that, the program worked. 110,000 people since 2001 have been in this. And there's one case that I can think of a crazy guy going and shooting a bunch of people. And I think he was really flipped. I struggle when you look at what this administration is doing on so many levels. I mean, it's scary that they're destroying who we are to move the country in a way to a place where we've never been. And what's frustrating is that there are people that that I've known for a while who they're okay with it. This is what our military is doing. This is what these folks are doing as we speak. And I think it's wrong. And I think a lot of people think that it's flat wrong. I'm curious your thoughts. Should we be throwing all of these undocumented people out? Should we be throwing all these people who came to fight and to serve and to become citizens? Should we be kicking them to the curb? Curious your thoughts. You can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Gonna take a quick break. When we come back, we talk about there's a movement of Target workers at a couple of stores, one in Maryland, one in Virginia, that have been saying, hey, you know what? We want to have a voice on the job. We want to have some say in what's going on. We want dignity. We want respect. We don't want to be treated poorly. We want decent schedules. We want, the American dream. And we want to say in the treatment that we are encountering through our bosses. So we're going to talk to Erica when we come back about their movement, their hopes, and the struggle to join and form a union. Quick break. Right back. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show.
7, yeah, and I'll go to work at night. I got no time for living, yes, I'm working all the time. It seems to me I could live my life a lot better than I think I am. I guess that's why they call me the working man.
Making the blue blood see red. The Rick Smith Show.
Scrub, yes, sir.
Of the official EPA administrator's schedule.
Absolutely, which happened quite a bit.
Whistleblower says EPA Chief Scott Pruitt kept secret calendar to hide industry meetings.
This is a really sad day for Minnesota. That's what this is.
Minnesota regulators approve controversial new tar sands pipeline. Record overnight heat in Oman. Drought-fueled riots in Iran. Plus...
And that's just the tip of this melting iceberg.
Rhode Island becomes the first state to sue fossil fuel companies for knowingly contributing to climate change.
All of those stories and more straight ahead from BradBlog.com. I'm Brad Friedman.
And I'm Desi Doyen.
Stand by for 6 minutes of independent green news, politics, analysis, and snarky comment.
I could stand here all day and cite many other PowerPoints on the damages that could be caused.
Oh, please don't. This is your Green News Report. Okay, Desi Doyen, we're getting ready to stand down for the holidays, so I guess it's only right that we have Oh, just one or two more Scott Pruitt corruption stories before we go.
Yep, the hits just keep on coming. An EPA whistleblower testifying to the House Oversight Committee says EPA Administrator Scott Pruitt directed his staff to scrub his official calendar to hide meetings and said they kept a secret schedule to hide controversial meetings and calls with industry representatives. That's according to Pruitt's former Deputy Chief of Staff, Kevin Chmielewski. Altering or deleting records could be a violation of records-keeping laws. Pruitt is now under at least 15 active investigations for his questionable ethics practices, lavish spending, and retaliation against employees who questioned his actions.
Yeah, but these latest charges are from just another liberal Obama. Wait, you said it was his former chief of staff?
Deputy Chief of Staff.
Uh-oh.
Meanwhile, a dangerous heat wave is sizzling much of the U.S. this week, but the city of Kiryat in the Arab nation of Oman has got it even worse. Kiryat broke the world record for the hottest overnight temperature in recorded history on Friday night, with an overnight low of 109 degrees.
That was the low.
Yes, that is the lowest temperature in 24 hours, and the city remained at that extreme heat level for more than 48 hours. Climate scientists warn that average overnight temperatures around the world are trending higher, another sign of global warming. In southern Iran, the most severe drought in more than 30 years is exacerbating unrest in the already volatile Middle East. AP reports that Iranian security forces fired on demonstrators on Sunday who were protesting water scarcity. Residents of Khorramshahr in southern Iran near the border with Iraq are protesting salty and muddy water coming out of their taps and blame government mismanagement for lack of clean drinking water. Here in the U.S., the Minnesota Public Utility Commission has approved the controversial new Enbridge 3 tar sands pipeline against the recommendations of the State Department of Commerce and administrative law judge and over the objections of Native American tribes who say it poses an unacceptable threat to their drinking water and wild food resources. The new pipeline will allow significant increases in tar sands crude oil transported from Canada across Minnesota to refineries in the U.S. Midwest. Winona LaDuke of the Indigenous environmental advocacy group Honor the Earth pledged that they will not give up the fight.
Because someone has to stand for the water. Someone has to stand for future generations. We are not backing down. We are here, we will stand here because we have been here for 10,000 years. We're the home team, and we're not going anywhere.
In California, the Trump U.S. Forest Service has reissued a permit to bottled water company Nestle to continue to pull millions of gallons of water a year out of the San Bernardino National Forest in Southern California. Nestle had previously been exposed for withdrawing water in the drought-prone region without a permit for decades. But the U.S. Forest Service has forgiven all that.
Well, that's good, and now Nestle is going to pay their fair share for this water that they're drawing out of California, right?
Not so much. The total annual cost for Nestle to withdraw 36 million gallons of water a year is just $524.
$524 million.
Nope.
$1,000.
Nope, just dollars.
Wow.
Finally, in a press conference on Monday, Rhode Island Attorney General Peter Kilmartin announced the state has filed suit against the oil industry, becoming the first state in the United States to sue the major oil companies to recover the costs of damages to Rhode Island's coastal communities and economy. The suit alleges that oil industry executives knew their products contributed to dangerous global warming, but chose to lie about it to their shareholders and the public. The suit seeks to help pay for the cost of catastrophic consequences for Rhode Island's communities, like rising sea levels.
We will prove that they negligently failed to warn the state of the damages created by their products, they harmed the environment, and they violated the state's Environmental Rights Act. Enough is enough.
For much more on all of these stories and the ones we couldn't get to, please check out our website at greennews.bradblog.com. Find us, follow us, and share us worldwide on the Facebooks and the Twitters at Green News Report. I'm Brad Friedman.
And I'm Desi Doyen.
And this has been your Green News Report.
Remembering that united we bargain, divided we beg. Rick Smith.
He's going the distance. He's going for speed. She's all alone.
might remember last year, I think it was September of last year, we talked to a group of workers from Christiansburg, Virginia, who worked at a Target store down there, who were organizing against poor management treatment, poor schedules, a lot of the stuff that you find in the retail industry. And it was, it was kind of a unique little situation where, these workers began to organize, and there was a small group, who was saying, look, we want to form a union. We want to have dignity, respect, better wages, hours, conditions, all of that stuff. And also we want this manager fired. We want this guy who's just, horrible to people, treats people, in the worst possible ways, want him out the door. And as I understand, they did get him sent down the road. Well, now they've moved from Christiansburg, Virginia, to Timonium, Maryland, where Target workers there, a lot of the same problems, poor treatment of workers, just horrible stuff that you go, is this the retail industry? Is there a way to change that? Well, that's why I've asked Erica Feldenzer to come talk with us. She's a Target worker there in Timonium. Erica, thanks for taking time for us.
Oh, thank you for having me. I'm glad to talk to you, man.
So tell me what's going on. What kind of things are going on in your store? Because you're a Target worker, right?
Yes, I am. I've been a team member since last year of August, so I've been there for almost a year now.
So what's made you in this period of time go, you know what, things are messed up. We've got to move. We've got to do something. What's made you come out of the shadows, if you will?
Yeah. So there was an incident earlier this year. My coworker, Denisha, she was fired from the job, and my experience of that was really just seeing security running through the store, calling her name, like, what is going on? And, I've talked to Denisha before, and, she's always getting her hours cut, they always have her doing all this type of stuff around the store because they know that they can push her around. And I know all of this because, I used to work in HR. I used to be a human resources person, working behind the desk, working directly with management. And, they know the people that they can push around and, move around the store. And she was one of those people. But she would, I would see her, kind of say, look, like, can I have these days off? You're scheduling me too much, or you're not scheduling me enough. And, I think she just got fed up with it one day and was like, look, like, I can't do this anymore. She basically confronted one of the managers, and she happened to have a box cutter in her hand. And so basically what happened from there is, the store team lead at the store, he's now gone. But he tried to say that she was violent and that she was chasing people around the store with a box cutter, which was a complete lie because I was in the store while this whole thing was happening. And she was just upset, she
Right.
was really just saying, y'all managers, you're not out here protecting workers. You're not out here for our best interest. You're here for your interest and your interest alone.
Well, isn't that isn't that management's goal? Isn't their interest above yours? You're just tools to get jobs done, right?
Oh yeah, but I would think that they would have basic respect for the people who do their dirty laundry, basically, and I think that after that incident, and hearing about how all the managers were locked in one office together, mind you, there's like 8 managers, so they're all locked in this office, right? Because they're scared of her, and I felt like the whole incident, and she was telling me, like, I felt like the entire thing was completely racist. They would not treat a white worker like this ever. It only takes somebody to say, well, she's got a box cutter on her, which
there's a black woman with a knife. Run.
Yep, run from her. Like, she's just gonna caught up in, you know, it's going to be a slasher movie up in here, like, you know, and really it's just, they took it to that level. It wasn't her. Like, she was fed up because, you know, I mean, she's just, at the end of the day, she's just a hard worker. She's trying to support her, you know, she's a single parent. She's trying to support her kids. She's trying to get as many hours as she can possibly get because, hello, I mean, Target, you know, $10 an hour, $11 an hour, it doesn't cut it.
Right. So,
it
you know,
really
to me,
does
you know,
not
I
cut
hear
it.
this whole story, and, you know, as a union guy, I go, you know, there's so many things that should be in place. There should be a grievance procedure put into place. So right from the beginning, when you have that first problem, you know, I have a scheduling problem, you know, there's a way to deal with that without tempers flaring and without managers being able to pick and choose and play favorites and abuse, or however that plays out. To me, that's the first thing that I would say you need to have a union there to have a grievance machinery, to have things written down, to have procedures in place so that this stuff doesn't happen.
Right. I completely agree with you, but, you know, as we all know, Target is severely anti-union. I mean,
vehemently anti-union. Did they show you the video when you got hired? Because there's a famous video that goes around of Target's anti-union video. Did they make you watch that?
No, but I did see it like a few months ago, and I just thought it was so ironic because, you know, they had, you know, and I'll get into this, but, you know, they tried to basically retaliate against me for trying to organize workers, which, you know, I mean, God forbid that, like, workers want to, like, you know, have a voice and, you know, get, like, scheduled fairly.
Right.
And,
well, I mean, just basic decency, basic dignity and respect. I mean, you know, to me, you know, I've said this a bunch of times. Workers don't organize, don't go through the process and really the hassle with our labor laws of trying to organize if working conditions are great and wages are fantastic. It's only when managers are horrible human beings and do things like you're laying out.
Right. Yeah. I mean, you know, and I think that, you know, if you heard it from management's perspective, like, this was just somebody that they needed to get rid of. They needed to get rid of somebody who, you know, was violent, unstable, you know, just not contributing to a comfortable working environment. But really, at the end of the day, like, those people, you know, those people could care less. They have salaries, you know, you know, they get paid pretty well. They're guaranteed their hours, you know, so they don't really have much to worry about.
Is that one of the big complaints? I mean, hours. I mean, I hear that in the fast food industry. I also hear it in the retail. Is in your store, is that a big problem for people not being able to get predictable schedules and enough hours to support themselves?
Yeah, definitely. I've talked to at least three coworkers that have applied for partial unemployment while working at Target because their hours got cut from something ridiculous like from 40 to like 18 hours in a week. Yeah. You know, nobody, you know. Oh, go ahead.
No, I mean, and that's just not right. I mean, and it's no way to treat people because, and it's no way to keep people. So that tells me that they want those people by the wayside. They want to force them out the door.
Right. They don't, you know, Target does not want somebody that's going to cause problems for them. You know, they want you to come in. The only really thing that they care about is attendance and performance. One, they want you to attend work, obviously. They want you to come into work every day, you know, regardless if you're sick, you know, regardless if, you know, there's something going on with your kids, regardless if, you know, you just have personal issues, you got to take the day off. They still want you to come into work. Two, if you're you know, you got to perform like a robot. You know, you got to perform these tasks at the most highest level, you know, and you got to be able to do 6 different jobs in the store. You know, that's why they always push the cross training thing. You know, because, you know, they always say, like, well, if you're cross-trained, you'll get more hours. But really, I mean, if you're cross-trained,
It
they're
just means you're
going
gonna
to
do
force
more
you
work.
to do. Yeah, you're going to do 3 times the work in, like, the same amount of time you had before.
Right. But here's the thing. I'm someone who believes you show up to work. I mean, if you're sick, that's one thing. You've got some, you know, some other things. That's another thing. I see you show up to work, you do your job. I get that. But there's a point at which it becomes extreme. To where, as you're pointing out, you're being cross-trained in 6-10 different areas, and they want you doing the work of 2 or 3 people, and they're deliberately understaffing, and then putting that pressure on you to pick up the slack, just so they can, you know, have a couple extra bonus dollars. To me, you know, that's a problem. But yeah, it's like a lot of this stuff, though. It comes down to the incentives that companies give these managers, and then their tactics to force, you know, the workforce into doing it. Which is why, again, I come back to I'm a big supporter of labor unions. It solves these problems in ways that doesn't come to someone holding a box cutter. So let me ask you the other side of this, because you said a moment ago that, you know, they're harassing you and you know, I guess intimidating you for your union activity. You know, there are a lot of people who've never been through this. You know, they've never, you know, decided that they were going to say, hey, we need this. What's the experience been like for you thus far?
It's been interesting, you know, and it's definitely been a roller coaster of emotions for me, for sure. You know, the people from Christiansburg, Virginia that, you know, specifically Adam, who's one of the lead organizers there, I mean, he's really, like, helped me and supported me and told me, like, look, like, this is an uphill battle, you know, because it really started with me going into work and being like, look, you know, like, you know, I'd ask people for their numbers, or to ask them, you know, even sometimes at work or like off the clock, what are the issues that you are experiencing at work, you know, and furthermore, do you want to change it? Do you want to take action? I was actually asking people to write EEOC statements, because at the time that's what we were focused on, was taking legal action against Target, which is kind of a, you know, it's a longer term type of action, but I do think that it can be very effective in certain circumstances. And, you know, as soon as, you know, because management found out some way, I'm not sure how, but they started asking people, not just me, but like, I want to say at least 10 or 20 people at work, they started asking them, hey, you know, do you know anything about these EEOC statements? Were you asked to write one? You know, they asked me, you know, the STL, the store team lead, he pulled me into his office, you know, closed the door and was like, you know, I heard you're getting people to write these statements, you know, what is this about? And I'm like, you know, I basically just told him, you're violating my rights right now. I'm not going to answer any of your questions. I'm done.
Good on you. I mean, it's very few people who know that they have the right not to have to put up with that kind of intimidation.
I was nervous. Yeah, I mean, I was nervous as hell, but I knew talking to people online that, you know, this is not, you know, interrogation is a violation of the NLRB Act. You know, you can't interrogate workers about concerted activities, and things related to organizing. So, you know, but I can't say the same thing for my coworker. You know, I try to inform some people about their rights, but I mean, that's another piece of it too, is, you know, once people know their rights, you know, you can't really,
no, once they're
you
empowered,
really do empower them.
Certainly. Once you're empowered, and this is why, you know, the wealth class of this country has to destroy unions. When you have an empowered working class, it's not just about jobs, it's about society, it's about politics. It filters into everything else. So let me ask you a last line of questioning, because I saw that on the 3rd, you guys had a rally. You had, you know, people coming from the community. You had people walk out of the store. What kind of response are you getting from your coworkers? What kind of response are you getting from the community as this kind of stuff comes to light?
Yeah, It's definitely mixed feelings. There's some people that the best responses are from people that are saying like, hey, you know, I didn't really know what the specifics were of what was going on, you know, can you tell me more about that? You know, and then I would kind of like tell them about it, explain the situation, explain why we were taking action, and they're like, yeah, I can definitely see that. I've been experiencing some of those issues as well. Or I'm very supportive of this cause, you know, I haven't experienced those things, but I totally get where you're coming from. I think that's very courageous. I support you. And like that's been one of the responses. Other people think that we're idiots, you know, that we're, you know, like, I don't know why they would go into the store saying no justice, no peace, you know, like, I would never do that, you know. I think that some of those reactions are kind of based in fear. And I think that, you know, some people even came up to me and was like, do you understand that like these district managers by the names of so-and-so and so-and-so, and they got fired. And I'm like, well, great. That was our goal.
Yeah, that's the goal. Maybe the next one won't. Maybe the next ones won't be idiots like those.
Right. Yeah. I mean, you're and at the end of the day, you're never really, you know. I kind of expected going into this that would be a risk. You know, they might try to. I mean, they'd be wrongfully terminating me, but you know, they might try and fire me. You know, you can't. I think that I try to remind people like you got to risk something to get a reward. You know, sometimes, you know, because I've went to manage, you know, all levels of management. I've even went to corporate, you know, with a lot of the issues I've had with scheduling, with hours, with management, you know, with pay, and raises and stuff like that. And, you know, it's all just smoke and mirrors, you know. I think Target likes to put out there that they have this open door policy, which it's only open if the door is open and I can bring somebody there with me to talk to you. Because a lot of times management likes to do this where they're like, oh, you want to talk to me? Okay, great. Come in here alone, close the door, you know, you can say what you want to say, and then we'll say, oh, well, we'll look into this, you know, we'll look into it.
Yeah, and there's the
and
black
then nothing happens.
Yeah. Well, Erica,
Right.
I give you credit for standing up, stepping up, and speaking out. I wish you nothing but the best. I hope the best for your coworkers, and this continues. I hope you'll keep us up to date on what's going on.
Yeah, definitely, sir. This is the first step in a long line of you know, a long journey to you know, to hold corporations accountable. You know, I mean, my focus is on Target because I work there, but that's really ultimately the goal.
Yep.
So,
as I say, you want to make the world a better place, make your corner the best place. Erica, thanks so much. Appreciate it.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Anytime. Good stuff. Again, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Tell me what you think. Are you seeing the same kind of things that she's talking about? Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Quick break. Right back. Stick around. Listen to The Rick Smith Show.
We chase the best house from the basement. Our current ride race, we run to stand still. This is a fading American dream. I've got the time now, keep up the climb now. For a second chance, come on the board. I'm just searching for my dignity. This is a fading American dream. This is a fading American dream. This is a fading American dream.
You're listening to The Rick Smith Show.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1888. That was the day that the spark was lit that touched off what came to be known as the Match Girl strike in East London. The Match Girls were workers at the Bryant and May Match Factory. Matches were in high demand. The workers struggled under horrible conditions. If the workers were late, they were fined a half day's pay. For 14 hours a day, they toiled. The factory used white phosphorus that contributed to a bone cancer known as phossy jaw. Both Sweden and the United States had banned the dangerous phosphorus, but it was still legal in England. The plight of these workers caught the attention of Annie Besant. Annie was a socialist and women's rights activist who wrote for a weekly newspaper called The Link. She published an article about the deplorable conditions in the match factory. Outraged, the managers demanded their workers to sign a statement saying that Annie Besant's story was false. When one worker refused, she was fired. In response, 1,400 match girls walked off the job. Progressive newspapers across England called for a boycott of Bryant and May matches. From there, the women formed a union and asked Besant to serve as their leader. For 3 weeks, she helped the strikers with their work action and to negotiate with management for safer working conditions. The company agreed to hire back the workers who had been fired. They also agreed to drop the harsh fining system, but they would not stop using the dangerous white phosphorus. In 1891, the Salvation Army opened up its own factory using a less dangerous type of red phosphorus. Finally, in 1901, Bryant and May, under public pressure, stopped using the white phosphorus. Like what you hear? Check out more at laborhistoryin2.com.
Remembering that united we bargain, divided we beg. Rick Smith.
I'm going to this battle, take my Union gun. Gonna end this world of slavery for this war is one you're bound to.
You know, I give Erica and people like Erica a lot of credit to be willing to stand up, step forward, and speak out about, you know, things that happen on the job to other people. The kind of harassment, intimidation that, you know, I've heard these stories, you know, for years in fast food and retail, in the low wage economy, where you have managers who, you know, they think they're gods and they dole out hours based on favoritism. They dole out hours based on favors. And, you know, this is where a lot of sexual harassment happens. This is where a lot of shenanigans go on. And, you know, you've heard stories, you know, will you work overtime? Will you work through your lunches? Will you work through your breaks? Oh, hey, you go out with me on Saturday night. There's a lot of that stuff that goes on. And especially when you're talking about, as Erica pointed out, that the woman that she was, that had gotten fired, needed the hours. You know, she had kids. And once they know that, they pull these kind of things. For me, it's another reason that every worker, I don't care what you do, should have the power of grievance machinery, the power of a collective bargaining agreement, everything in writing. And it's always been curious to me that businesses didn't want the same thing. Because, you know, from an HR standpoint, having a union contract pretty much makes things really simple. You know, it's very black and white because it's written down. And there's always a way to solve these problems without them blowing up into chaotic situations, like security guards running through the store screaming someone's name. But you come back to the reason, like a Target or a Walmart or any of these big retailers or any of these low-wage employers wouldn't want a union. It comes back down to money. It comes back down to power. It comes back down to, you know what? We just don't like you. There's the door. You're out. And in this country, most states are at-will states. So you have no recourse if they fire you, unless they say, you know, get your old behind out of here, or one of the, you know, the federally protected things. But they don't even have to give a reason. They're smart. They say, you know what? We're just not going to schedule you anymore. You're done. And that's what happens in a lot of these places. So to see someone like Erica willing to step forward really gives great hope that her generation is the one that leads a resurgence and leads back to saying, you know what, we're not putting up with this, you know what, anymore. That simple. Good on her. If you missed any of today's program, thericksmithshow.com. That's where you go to get the podcast, the Rick Smith Show app on the smartphone. Take the program on the go wherever you go. And as always, you can email me, Rick at thericksmithshow.com. Thanks so much for tuning in. We'll see you tomorrow.
You've been listening to The Rick Smith Show. Together, we can make America better. Email Rick at thericksmithshow.com or interact with us anytime at thericksmithshow.com. Until next